Hi everyone, this is Azor, the ZED player. I've been getting a lot of requests to do a ZED tutorial, which I think could be really fun. The main problem is just that ZED is split up into very many different mechanics, and there's a lot to know about playing ZED, so I don't think you can fit everything into a single tutorial or a single video. So for that reason, I actually am going to start making a series where I basically teach specific techniques every Tuesday on how to, or specific techniques on what you can do with ZED. So in this video I'll talk about a technique I call the line, which is a very basic standard way to alt. And I'll show you two clips and I'll explain how they differ and when you should use this technique. So in this clip I alt Sundra, pretty standard. The main thing I do is that after I ult, immediately after I ult, I place a shadow behind her, which means I both get a positioning advantage behind her, so if she starts running back I can actually run to her, but above all, as you can see, I hit all three of my shurikens, and two of my shurikens get the maximum damage, which means I get 1.5 times the maximum damage on the shuriken. Unfortunately, my ultimate shadow actually hit a minion in between, which is unfortunate, but this is the basic premise with the line. Basically, you use your ultimate to cover distance, then use your W behind the target to get a better vantage point to hit a second E and a third shuriken. So basically, if you hit two E's, you get more slow, and when you're right on top of the target with the W, it's easier to hit both shurikens for max damage, and it's also easier to hit your third shuriken from your ultimate shadow. It's probably easier to see how it works out in this clip, because in this fight I actually use the W to cover more distance, and I think it's very it's better shown here how the line is not only useful for hitting all three of your shurikens, but also for mobility. Because when you've landed on top of your target with your ultimate, you place a shadow behind him, it's easy to, you can go either back or forward. That's all up to you and to this specific situation. So you get full mobility of the situation. So you can back out when you need to. You can use your CDs and then back out easily. And above all, you can, if you have more HP and you're into a close fight, you can place your W closer to the target, which I didn't do in this clip because I was actually quite low in HP. You can place your W close to the target to get more slow from your E, because if both E's hit, you get used slow from a more percentage. But basically, this is the general idea of the line. So basically, to sum up the line is you ulti the target, place a shadow behind them, and then use your Q and E to get as much damage as possible and to slow as much as possible. And then you're free to move back or forward. In either case, thank you guys for watching. I'll be back with another tutorial next week. So until then, thanks for watching. I'll see ya. Hi everyone, welcome back to lesson 2 of ZED School. Before we begin this lesson, I'd like to just clarify something about this series. I understand that there are many experienced ZED players watching this series also, not only new players, but primarily I'd like to focus on the new ZED players, and then later transition into more advanced techniques that also more experienced players can use. But let's focus on this lesson for now. I'll show you a few clips and explain how it works, what you should think about, and not really the math behind it, but more of the thought behind it. As you can see in this clip, I placed my W quite close to Lissandra and then used my Q and E. But actually, if you look at it in slow motion, you can see that I actually used my Q and E just slightly before the W lands. You can actually do this. You can use your Q and E while the W shadow is in the air, and it will copy the movements when it lands. And this is generally how you want to do your poking in lane. Basically, you throw out your W and then use your Q and E while it's in the air and target towards your opponents. And if you're positioned correctly, you can hit both of your shurikens for the max damage as well as your E. Something to consider whilst poking and being in lane is that the first Q that hits the target deals 100% of its damage, it deals the full damage. The second Q and the third Q deals 50% of the damage. Another thing to think about is that after you do your combo, it's very easy to back off and then jump to Shadow as I do here for an extra auto attack or two. What you do need to think about though is that using this type of combo over and over again can be very energy consuming, which means you'd be at the risk of running out of energy and then potentially losing your farm because you can't use your Q and WE. Also, it's very dangerous because you're very susceptible to ganks if you use this combo because your only escape is basically used. The easy way to think about the poking is basically that you're using your W as an AoE and that you're aiming your W towards the target as basically Lux's Lucent Singularity. In either case, thank you guys for watching. I'll be back next week with another lesson. If there's a specific lesson that you'd like me to have, or if there's a specific aspect about ZED that you're wondering about that you think others could be wondering about as well, then please post it in the comments and I'll read and see if there's any extra lesson I should have. In either case, thanks for watching, I'll see you next week. Hi everyone, welcome back to the third lesson of ZED School. Due to popular demand, this lesson will be about team fighting. Before we begin, I just need to clarify something. There is no definitive formula for every team fight, because every team fight is different. Sometimes you need to peel, sometimes you need to kill the tanks, sometimes you need to initiate, but it really does vary a lot. I will instead give you a general guide on how you should pull off team fights as ZED. Before every fight begins, you should always consider this. Which enemy has the highest priority? In this clip, the Syndra gets called out immediately by Blitzcrank, so I go straight for her, and then immediately when she's dead, I try to aim for the second highest priority target that I can reach, which was Fiddle. He died very quickly as well. And then I head straight for Sivir, who's the third or second highest priority. And this is generally how you want to think of team fighting. Basically, before every fight, you think of the highest priority target, you aim straight for them, and if one of them dies and you die for that, that's fine. That's usually a good trade if you're not the one carrying your team. Now in this clip, I spend most of the fight not actually fighting. I get in a poke or two with Q, but apart from that, I mainly just zone the enemy Aatrox and Vayne. Which is another legit strategy, especially if you're not fed enough to be sure that you'll take the enemy high priority down. You can make sure that they're out of the fight. Something that I want to touch on is how you can't stand still in teamfights. When you've initiated into the enemy backline, you have to finish your assassination and keep moving. ZED works a lot like Lee in laning, in that he jumps in and out frequently in fights. You do your burst, you back off, wait for CDs, jump in. Now, sadly, my LOL recorder has crashed, and basically all my most of my old replays are lost forever. I can't show you a replay where I peel for an AD carry, but I will emphasize how important that can be, because it is one of the three main strategies in teamfights. So to summarize how to teamfight as ZED, before every fight, you should consider these three things. Who's the highest priority target on the enemy team? Is it worth for me to die to take them down? Is my AD carry fit enough to carry by himself? And then you base your team fighting around your answer to those questions. Note that I say base your team fighting around those questions because obviously things might change in the heat of battle, but you get a general idea of what you should do after answering those 3 questions. Now, if you'd like to take it one step further, it's really good to ask yourself, what CC do they have? Generally, you want to jump into the fight after the CC is used. Most of the time, you can't jump in after every single CC is used, but you want to ask yourself, what is the main CC I want to avoid, and then initiate after that. So to summarize, ask yourself the 3 magic questions, decide if the enemy carries are worth dying for, wait for the CC, and then slice their throats. Now, before I leave, I'd like to address the people who have been sending messages to me telling me not to reveal the secrets of ZED. To those people, I only have one thing to say.
Secrets kept are weapons wasted.
See you next week. Class dismissed. Hello everyone, welcome back to ZED lesson. This will be the 4th lesson, and this lesson will be about Zhonya's hourglass and how to play against it. As always, I have something to say before the lesson. I would like to apologize for the late video. I've been having this cold for forever and lots to do in school, and above all, my LOL recorder refuses to play any old replays for me, so I can't record the recordings I wanted to show for this video where I play properly against Zhonya's hourglass. But now I've finally sat down and found the instances in my recordings where I kill someone with hourglass. In this video I'll focus on the dueling aspect of this technique. First of all, let's talk about what Zhonya's does. Apart from the passive armor and AP, it makes you invulnerable for 2.5 seconds. The important thing to note here is that it takes 3 seconds for your ultimate damage to pop. This means that an ideal Zhonya's hourglass is 0.5 seconds after you ulti. However, most of the time your enemies will either panic Zhonya's, like this Needly, to block the initial damage, or Zhonya's just at the end of your ultimate to block its pop damage. In a normal duel with a mage, where you initiate, you want to use R to catch up, only use auto attacks until they Zhonya's, then you place a W behind them, jump back to your ults, wait for Zhonya's, and then jump to W, from which you hit them until they stop moving. This is a type of reversed line, if you remember the first lesson. Basically, you place the line, jump to your ultimate shadow, and then to W. The thought behind this is that you W after their Zhonya's, since Zhonya's lasts 2.5 seconds and your W lasts 4 seconds. By jumping back to your ultimate shadow, you can also dodge the potential AoE that casters have. When the Zhonya's is done, you can also easily double E and Q. I would like to emphasize the fact that every player is different, and you shouldn't expect one type of Zhonya timing over the other. Try to understand how the enemy player thinks and plays, and time your spells accordingly. Finally, remember not to use Ignite before the enemy uses Zhonya's. You will probably lose at least 2 ticks of Ignite if you use it before their Zhonya, which is pointless. In either case, thank you all for watching. I'll be uploading and streaming more frequently in the coming week. And again, I'm very sorry for the delay. It's like a shadow's been hanging over me. I'm sorry, I got bored. Thanks for watching. I'll see you. Hello. Welcome back to ZED School. This will be lesson number 5 called Shadow Coax. As always, a quick update before the video. I'm sorry for not streaming as much as I used to, but my finals are coming up and I really do have a lot to do at the moment. I'll stream on Friday evenings and Saturdays as of now for a few weeks. ZED Schools will be uploaded every Saturday from now on. Anyway, let's get on with the lesson. This technique is especially useful in laning. In short, you poke like we learned in lesson number 2, and then you walk backwards, both to regain energy /CD and to bait the opponent forward. When they walk closer towards you again, you can quickly WR to catch up to them. You will be surprised at how effective this actually is. It's sort of built into us when we play that if we don't sense danger, we will try to go for the CS. It's really what always happens. And since you just used your burst, they feel pretty safe walking forwards again. Or if not walking forward, then at least staying in a range that's still dangerous. The good thing about this technique is that it also works even if the enemy is suspecting it. We're touching on the subject of a future lesson right now, but I feel the need to emphasize how effective this really is. Should your enemy expect you to jump back to your W, and they are effectively zoning themselves by staying back, which means you can have constant pressure in lane, which would give you a lane advantage. I honestly believe this to be the most valuable lesson I will ever have. It is easy to learn and has a low risk with high reward trade-off. Additionally, it expands into my second most favorite technique, but more on that next week. Thanks for watching. Before I go, I'd just like to address the fact that many aspiring Z players are giving up on the way of shadows with the new exhaust changes. While I agree that they make the game more revolve around AD carries and really does hurt assassins, I can only remind you of one thing.
Only the worthy will survive.
Don't give up on that. See you next week. Hello everybody, welcome back to ZED School. My name is Azor and I'm finally almost done with most of my finals, and we can finally continue with our ZED lessons. This will be lesson number 6 regarding Kayle, and I will talk about laning against Kayle, when you power spike against her, and how to properly duel her. So let us begin. In lane, you'll be at a disadvantage for the majority of the time. ZED loses pretty much every full trade early on. Even if you dedicate hard and force her back, she can easily just turn around, use her Reckoning and Righteous Fury to slow you and to shred your resistances, as well as your HP. The two things you should focus on before your first back after level 6 is to poke only if you're going to get a gank or if she's really out of position, as well as to farm carefully. This means use your Q and E to farm, and only farm with auto attacks when you have to. Because what will happen when you go forward to get a minion or to poke her is that she'll use her Righteous Fury and shove the lane. This will allow you to get free CS under the turret, and since ZED is great at farming under the turret, it's definitely a win for you. The main problem that will arise is that you're allowing her to roam freely since you're letting her push freely. Make sure to ward and to spam the missing ping, but usually you don't want to follow her since she will outdo you in ganking and dueling early on. Focus instead on shoving the lane back as fast as possible to force her back to the lane. I would start off the lane with the Doran's Blade for the extra HP, as well as grabbing the Feast Mastery and 1.5 Lifestealing Quints. When you finally hit level 7 and you've gone back once, you can trade and duel with her immediately. Your power spike is a lot higher than hers at this point, and if you play properly, you should win most all-ins. And I will show you how to actually do that. First we'll take a look at a clip where I duel Kayle, and then we'll slow it down and look at what actually happens in the clip. This is as I've just gotten back from buying items, and I am at my strongest point at that level. I go for the fight as soon as I can and end up on top after timing my spells according to how she's reacting. So let's break that down into its separate pieces. I start off by trying to hit a shuriken. The idea is to throw the shuriken based on where she's heading. As we can see here, she's heading forward. Even though she backs off, as soon as she realizes I've thrown it, it's still a clean hit. The same idea goes for next part, which is basing an entire poke combo on her trying to get this minion. I aim my shadow where she's heading, and we do the standard poking combo that we learned in lesson number 2. Which, to recap, is W, Q all the shadows in the air, and E as fast as you can. At this point, she's ripe for the picking. I jump back to my W, just like in lesson number 5, and wait for her reckoning. When I see the animation, I immediately use my ultimate to dodge it. When she tries to run and uses intervention, I simply stop attacking and move ahead of her. At this point, we're right next to each other, and I can just keep running until intervention wears off. When it does wear off, I fire everything. First Shadow Slashing Ignite to get my passive, and then my ultimate procs. At this point, it's only a matter of hitting her until she's dead. I throw another nice shuriken that finishes her off, and then finish the whole thing off with using my ultimate again to get out of turret range. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you'll have less troubles playing against Kale in the future. I know she's a pain in the ass, but you can definitely still win against her. Make sure to split push, lake him, and you're golden. Until next time, stay hidden. See ya. Hello everyone, welcome back to ZED School. This will be a bit of a lighter episode, so let's not waste any time. Today we will be learning a technique called the sticky ultimate, and it revolves around how to properly stick to targets when counting engages and disengages, and how you can save yourself 2 engages / disengages by doing this. As always, Law Recorder is my nemesis, and we will have to resort to only a few newer recordings, but I think it should be fine. Let us begin. Now, the premise of the sticky ultimate is that you time your death mark so that you will land on when the opponent lands from their escape / mobility spell. Here's an example, although more of a miscalculation by Cassidy than a calculation by me, but shows the timing well all the same. There's a lot of anticipation connected with the usage of the sticky ultimate. Above all, it has to do with the speed of the enemy's escape ability. This is because the only thing that matters is when the death mark in target ability ends, which is about 1 second from ulting. It will place you exactly where the enemy is at that point. So for example, if you ult a Tristana as she's jumping and time it poorly, you might finish your death mark animation while she is mid-air and sequentially end up half a jump away from where she lands. In this clip I demonstrate this very phenomenon. I know approximately how fast the lantern is and I know the range of it, and I need to ult Lucian before he grabs the lantern, but as close to him grabbing the lantern as possible. And this is why this technique might be a bit more difficult for inexperienced players than my previous ones, since it relies on an overall knowledge of other champions' escape spells' speed. But I believe that with a bit of practice, this is an invaluable technique that will definitely save you flash in several occasions, since you nullify their escape with your engaged as well as actually properly engaging them. In either case, thank you very much for watching. I am going to stream a lot more now that my schoolwork is done for this term, and I will keep pushing for that partnership. I need to tell the Twitch partnership people,
Do not deny me.
and hopefully I'll be able to get it. Anyhow, thanks for watching, I'll see you next time. Hello everyone, welcome back to ZED School. This will be lesson number 8, where I show you how to use Deathmark defensively. This is a very useful tool when playing, since it allows you to dedicate and kill when you normally would die from just one turret shot or attack. It can also be used to juke or escape. Without further ado, let's get to it. Essentially what this technique is using your ultimate right after you use your ultimate, so that you'll jump back to the shadow that spawned from your first ultimate. What will happen is that you'll trigger potential AoE spells and disorient the enemy, as well as getting a shadow in a strategic location without having to waste your W. To show what I mean by that, let's take a look at this skill here. After using Deathmark, you'll land straight on top of your target. This means that the swapped shadow will be straight on top of the target as well. Therefore, as you can see, it's easy to still hit E and Q. Another useful aspect of this trick is the disorientation and escape potential it has, as you can see in this clip. The core philosophy behind instantly jumping back to your shadow is to avoid damage and danger while still dealing damage, as well as delaying your opponents. Knowing that Fiora will kill me and deny my ultimate damage with her ultimate, and full combo, I decide to juke away instantly, giving Vi about 1 second where Fiora is basically immobile. One last interesting phenomenon which often occurs when jumping back to your ultimate shadow is the line between your swapped R and yourself, where you get a clean W in. It's nothing spectacular, but still somewhat useful when fighting a fight that you know you can't win head-on. All in all, jumping back to your ultimate shadow right after using Deathmark gives you a situation where you can deal almost your full combo and still be very safe. It's useful for defensive fights, delaying fights, and escaping fights. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be streaming for a few hours after this is released, so come there to learn some more. Because remember,
Ignorance is fatal.
Hello everyone, welcome back to ZED School. My name is AZOR and I am very sorry for the delay. There is a lot on my mind right now, but I will try to get more regular with these uploads. In either case, this is ZED School lesson number 9 concerning split pushing. Split pushing is a very important tool for ZED players in all elos. The core idea behind it is to force your enemy to either quickly engage 4v5 and force objectives while you are at another lane, or to send someone to try to stop you. If you are fed, this is the best of all worlds, since if they send one person to get you, you can almost always 1v1 them, and if they send more than one person, your team will be in a 4v3 situation, giving your team a strong advantage. Most of the time you will be split pushing top or bot. Since the map is mirrored, let's look at this from the perspective of a blue side player, and let's start with warding. When you split top, you will want to have wards at these two locations, depending on how far you pushed. This way your opponent has to take the long way to not be spotted on their way to you. This is if you are pushing the inner and inhibitor turrets. If you are pushing the outer and inner turret, consider warding either of these places instead. Now, if we flip to bottom side instead, you'll find that the warding is a bit more simplistic. Always have a ward in blue bush, no matter how deep you're splitting. If you are splitting deep, keep a ward around here, and if you're not splitting as deep, and you know that they will be roaming from mid lane, it does not hurt to keep a ward at Drake. The times to split are either when you feel that you can't do much in teamfights for whatever reason, or if your team is unable to siege because of strong anti-siege, or if you want to force an objective such as Baron by splitting bot and giving the enemy team an ultimatum that they have to deal with very quickly. Now that brings me to the main thought behind split pushing, how effective it is in solo queue. Make sure to tell your team that you are splitting, and that until they see at least one enemy on your lane, they should stay defensive. If they can manage that, a split push is easily something that could give your team back the advantage, since it requires a bit of organization by the enemy team to deal with. If you're split pushing and your team dies, weigh your options quickly. Can you get the inhibitor? Should you go back in defense? Those are usually your two options. Usually you can't defend one versus many, but if the enemy team is low and has lost a few members in the fighting, it's possible you could even clean up and get a few kills if you go back to defend. But usually what you want to do is keep pushing and get the inhibitor if they can't come get you. Of course, unless the nexus is threatened, then it doesn't really matter if you get bot inhibitor. Whatever you end up doing, make sure you stick with it. As we all know,
hesitation is the seed of defeat.
And if you end up recalling too late and not even getting the inhibitor, you're probably going to lose your own inhibitor and not get anything for it. When split pushing specifically as ZED, a crit based build usually works best. And then when you're actually dueling, focus not as much on jumping around and dodging, and more on brute forcing until your enemy is dead and keep auto attacking. So, to recap, decide if you should split push. Decide if you can split push. Ward appropriately. Make sure that your team is on board with your decision. Stick to your decision. Have a crit item. Don't jump around too much when you're dueling.